Hello everybody, my name is Alexander, and this is episode 3 of Dream of the Week. As you can see from the surroundings, I decided to film this one outside, right here on my deck, overlooking the bountiful beauty of nature. Change of pace, we'll see how it goes. But this episode 3 of Dream of the Week is entitled Lord of the Dreams. Maybe you can guess what the content will be. I'll begin by describing the dream. As it begins, I'm watching a movie, though the point of view is one of me being in the movie, experiencing it as a character, with a shifting frame of reference. At times I'm one character, at times I'm another, but also retaining the detached point of view of a watcher. This is a moderately common dream phenomenon for me. Not something I experience every night or even every week, but familiar enough. This is a film in the vein of Lord of the Rings. It's a fantasy epic that somewhat resembles Tolkien's tale, with analogous characters and a similar theme to it. As it begins, envision a large inn by a rocky shoreline. The various armies of a grand alliance are gathered within, groups of elves, hobbits, dwarves, and more, all here to meet and form a pivotal alliance for the future of the world. Leading us are the main characters, you could say, of the movie, mostly similar to Frodo, Legolas, or Gimli, etc. There's one faction that arrives. There's a group of isolated dwarves led by their queen, and they speak their own language, and it's only the Gimli-type character that can communicate with them. Part of the dream is spent here in the inn, as the characters, deal with each other, make bargains with one another, and attempt to communicate with these foreign dwarves. At this point, another one of the main characters leaves the inn, and my point of view follows him as I kind of become him. He goes outside, and when he returns to the inn, seems nearly everybody's left. When he questions one of the staff at the inn, they tell him that his companions have departed for an area further inland. At this point, I, as the character, as well as being myself at the same time, enter a car that's departing for this destination. And yes, this is a modern-day automobile. I get in and I begin to notice that the various things on the dashboard, the odometer and the time, display various what you'd call repeating number synchronicities, like 1111, 333, that kind of thing. And I also begin to notice that, this is a modern-day car. It doesn't quite fit in with this setting of Lord of the Rings. And as I'm doing this, my point of view shifts again, and I'm viewing a kind of flashback where we're seeing the villain of the story, who is unnamed, taking the airplane and crashing it like a terrorist into a building where the supposed son of Bilbo Baggins is, who gets killed somewhere in the distant past. And apparently, I know that he used the same method to kill a Boromir type of character that was in the plot as well. Right now, I kind of step backward, and I rapidly transition out of this scene, and now I'm in a movie theater. I'm more or less myself. I'm here with my parents and various other people, and we're watching a movie on a screen here. And we start to talk, and we comment on how this is kind of ridiculous. They're trying to get this anachronistic stuff in a Lord of the Rings movie, like airplanes and cars, and like, what's the deal with this? This is a bad film. We don't quite get this. I kind of walk over to the side, also in the theater, and I see that there's a stage set up, and there's two actresses on the stage, supposedly performing this same movie, though it's live. And they appear to be dressed in these robes and are wielding lightsabers, and they're having this mock duel, where they're supposedly two Sith apprentices fighting it out for the favor of their master, the Sith Lord. Meanwhile, I start to talk to the actresses on the stage while they're performing, and it seems like a normal thing. I discuss with them details about the Star Wars extended universe, which was basically cut out by Disney. I talk to them about Marvel Comics and various other things like that, but soon I get bored with this. I'm not feeling a connect with this scene, so I step away, and I start to exit the theater. And as I do so, I see my old friend Brian from my college days, who used to be my roommate. And he tells me that this movie we just saw, including the Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars parts, are just a parody of the real film, a satire, and that we should go off and see the real movie. So we go off, leave the theater, and begin to do that. And at that point, I wake up back in my physical body. As you see or hear, I could be a huge nerd. Stories like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter are part of my reality. I have dreams set in the context of Dungeons and Dragons adventures, Super Mario Brothers, and plenty of comic book superheroes, though I say mostly Marvel, a little bit of DC and others. Since childhood, I've had a love of fantastical stories set in magical, paranormal worlds depicting mysterious, mystical events. I grew up on such material, and I still read and watch it to this day. In addition to the escapism and fantasy, I feel these stories give us glimpses into a greater reality. They provide a safe medium for discussing topics that would otherwise shake people's sense of existence. At least certain people. In many ways, I see stories like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars as being a kind of modern mythology. In prior eras, people would gather to hear tales of their gods, of Thor and Odin, Zeus or Heracles. And many people grew up reading extensively, still today, from the Bible or the Quran or the various Hindu sacred texts. Whatever the historical reality of such stories is, I feel they present people with this set of symbols, archetypes for their inner landscapes. These stories help define who we are. They give us a culture and a way to talk about a higher, symbolic kind of reality through these metaphorical topics they deal with. From what I've heard, people in older times often dreamt of these mythical heroes and gods and saints. People of a more religious upbringing may dream of their own pantheon of beings still to this day, or so I've heard from them. I did not grow up in a very religious household. Those stories about religion were a part of my childhood. They were distant and infrequent, like occasional Bible stories I would hear from a children's book. What truly made an impression on me was the science fiction and the fantasy, the comic book heroes and the over-the-top villains, the epic struggles and the great battles found therein. Luke Skywalker and Frodo Baggins took the place for me of Jesus or Moses or a Krishna, providing their own symbolic roles for my budding childhood awareness. Our subconscious, to me, speaks to us in terms of symbols we can understand, that we can relate to. So now, I often dream about this kind of stuff, and whatever it means, makes for really fun dreams at times. But what does it mean exactly? Does it mean I've been watching and reading too much Lord of the Rings related material? Yeah, it's probably part of it. To be sure, I admit it. I have recently gone through some of those books and movies again, after not really having delved into them for years. Still, I don't feel it's all just day residue. I know my day residue, that kind of stuff that you experience that's left over from the previous day. Usually I experience that in my earliest dream cycle, kind of where I'm not fully into the dream stage yet, and it usually comes in the form of repeating patterns and a very repetitive kind of story. Not detailed imagery and detailed plot lines and stuff where I'm actually in the zone of the dream. That's how it works for me. According to the universal language of mind, this is a way of interpreting dreams, I've been talking about it before, fictional characters may be symbolic for the use of your imagination or creativity. If I were to follow that mindset, I say this dream is all about combining and mixing my imaginative abilities to create something new, something beautiful and real. The different characters, races, and factions could represent various creative ideas that I have that need to be synthesized and brought together, while the presence of the seemingly out of place cars and airplanes might indicate a way of bringing them into the modern age, you could say, or into physical reality. Then we have the fact that the whole thing was a joke, a parody of an actual movie. This could mean that the whole thing is a type of reflection, you could say, a shadow of a greater reality that lies just beyond. Maybe this dream could be seen as a way to take my imagination and bring it into the waking world, manifesting it into a fully realized creation. And yes, that does kind of work for me. In addition to being what you could say, a full-time dreamer and having a day job, I'm also an author, and have long been working on making that into a profession. In the past year, I've been going over my writings and a few fantasy worlds I've created, and I've been thinking about starting a new project that incorporates some spiritual concepts along with the space opera and fantasy components. Been thinking a lot about that. That could be a possibility. Yet, a dream like this could work on multiple levels. Could be a metaphor for life, the movie being how I see the world, like a thing of fiction that ultimately ends up being a parody, a mere mockery of the original. Think of the famous allegory of Plato's cave, you could say, where all of our phenomenal existence can be compared to mere shadows on a cave wall, with all of us prisoners in the cave, unable to see outside and thus believing these shadows that are moving are all that exist, our reality. Makes me think also of Shakespeare and his line about all the world is a stage. Or the Hindu or Buddhist ideas of the Maya, or that the world is just an illusion, the one we see at least. Things to think about. The dream could be hinting at all of the above, or maybe none of those. I'd say it's ultimately up to the dreamer to decide what it all means to them. I say this, if it gets me thinking, I suppose it's a good thing. And I certainly hope you'll be considering the possible meanings of your own weird, out there, goofy dreams as well. Maybe I'll inspire you. Either way, till next time, dream on, brothers and sisters.